so much for being here. I needed to put heels on because, as you can see, I'm covered with this podium. Everything in Europe is taller than me, so. So, I want you to think of some tutorial, or technical guide, or some documentation, or any learning resource you have used as part of your career. Think about it for a moment and really try to find what those pieces are. What sticks out in your mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind? What's something that you remember fondly? Now, think of the best learning resources you have ever used. Think about what was common among them. Think about those that you would have no problem sharing with other people, or saying, hey, if you want to learn this, this is absolutely the best thing to use to learn it. And then think of the absolute worst pieces of learning resources you have ever used. I'm willing to bet you that everything that you have categorized as the worst learning resources has had some missing pieces. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. It's not only just documentation, it just kind of fit and it's kind of a cool, quick name, but this really, really applies to any type of learning resource that you may create as a technical person. So a developer, a front-end engineer, anybody that writes any type of technical documentation. And we all should fit that profile because we should at least be doing it for ourselves. So we'll start with the bad, things that we are absolutely used to. What does it mean? Whenever we see bad learning resources, this is usually what we look like. I don't understand. What does it mean? Most bad learning resources are either unclear or unusable. And why they're unclear and unusable, I will tell you exactly why. They fall under one of these categories that I know, even I have done so myself, of why these learning resources are bad, how we can be aware of them, and how we can fix them. So we'll start with SMH IDK, or shaking my head, I don't know. So, when you are learning something new, or when you look up some new learning resource, some documentation, and you find a random phrase here, right? Something like, to create a TTL index on this field, use the following command. So, as developers, maybe this is common to us. Maybe we know what TTL stands for. But if you are in photography, maybe this is a different type of acronym. If you are in a different field, maybe TTL means something different. Or the CRI is an API for container runtimes to integrate with kubelet on a node. What? I mean, I know we've all been tech before, and I know that tech moves fast, but sometimes even we ourselves need reminders of what these acronyms mean and what we're learning about in what context. Or, again, whether you're using the MERN, the MEAN, the MEVN stack tutorial, this will be useful to learn the fundamentals. So, as you can probably tell, everything here that has been using acronyms, it's not that it's bad to use acronyms, it's the fact that sometimes you don't know what they mean the first time that you see it. So, just spell it out. TTL means time to live, as in time to live index. CRI API means container runtime interface for that particular context, or application programming interface. Even something like API that we take for granted. Think of people who are switching careers. Think of people who are just starting out. These are things that may be so familiar to us and something that we're like, everybody knows what this means. No, not everyone will know what that means. So at least spell it out the first time. And then finally, MERN, MEAN, MEVN. Spell it out. Who knows? Maybe somebody is thinking of a completely different stack for one of those letters. Be explicit about it. For this, just say the damn thing. Please. So that's shaking my head. I have no idea. Next thing, step skipper, and this is where our sound comes in. So I'm pretty sure you have all done some sort of tutorial like this.
Alright guys, welcome to my beginner's programming tutorial. We're going to create a simple program. Alright, first we're going to type in public class program, then public static void main string args, you know how it goes. Then import in this old ass outdated library from like 1994. Oh yeah, by the way, we're using Java 7, not Java 8, so sorry if you have to start over. All right, and then I'm gonna copy and paste this giant chunk of code. What this does is like it makes your computer do stuff. Put that in your program, and then compile and execute it, and there we go. We've created Minecraft.
Right? How frustrating is it to go through a tutorial like that? It's always like that. It's create this thing, it's add this code, and ta-da, you should be up and running now. No, we need to make sure that we are super explicit about our steps. Yes. Yes? This one. Okay. Put this down. All right. Hello. Wicka. Okay. So, all right. So, what we want to do is we need to be way more explicit with the steps that we have. We can't leave any of those gaps out. Really, when the steps that we write look like this, what they really should look like are something like this. Create that thing. Oh, and by the way, set this setting if it's not on by default. Also, add this code. Then replace the placeholders that are in my sample code and make sure they have your own values. Don't forget to hit the deploy button. These things seem so simple, but if you are following something through for the first time, or even if you're a seasoned developer and this is something completely new to you, you want all of those explicit details. Every machine is different, every context is different, everyone's background is different. So the more explicit you are about your steps, the more likely you'll actually get to that number 3, the ta-da, you should be up and running now. The more you'll be able to get to that developer delight, where someone will reach the end, have something working, and actually have some useful tutorial to be using. And even more explicit, add things like pro tips, Be sure to delete this if this is just something that you're trying out for the first time. If it's gonna cost them something, tell them to delete it, because a lot of us, I know, we play around with something for a little bit, we forget it, and then we have like a $30,000 AWS bill. Nobody wants that. So tell them everything there is to know. Use that expertise that you have, use the mistakes that you have learned from, and add them to all of the pieces of information or tutorials that you create so it can be way more valuable for others. It's in the details. All of those details. So don't be a step skipper. Next, I'm gonna have some enemies with this one. I always have enemies with this one, but I say foo your foo bar. What does that mean? So when you look at this piece of code, you've probably never seen it before. And if I asked you to tell me what exactly it's doing, how long would it take you to figure it out? Exactly, thank you. Because we have, single letter variables. We have random names that don't mean anything. We have damn foo and damn bar. We don't want these things anymore. Instead, be explicit. This is actually a potential solution that I wrote for one of the Advent of Code problems. So one of the problems you had to do was find the product of 2 entries whose sum is 2020. Now you know exactly what this function is doing. And make sure to completely explicitly write out what your variables are. Make those variable names meaningful. This might still take you a little while to go through and understand, but at least you have a better and shorter time of trying to figure out what that means. If you see here, this is something called German naming convention. So who here has heard of Chris Dunn? Raise your hand. No? Okay. Neither have I, but he wrote about something, and he wrote about something that I thought, I was already doing. I just didn't think anyone else did it. But every time I did write variable names, I would always be explicit. And my teammates would always make fun of me and say, Jesus, Adrienne, why is this so explicit? I'm like, but you understand it, right? And that's the whole point. And so this person, Chris Dunn, he wrote about something called the German Naming Convention, which is actually a teammate that he had who was German and who wrote their variable names super, super explicit. So anyone that's learned the German language, right, sometimes you can get very, very precise when you combine words. To the dismay of my German husband, I'm going to try. So what was the 1999 German word of the year? It means beef labeling, regulation, and delegation of supervision law. In German, because they can be explicit and connect things, it's Rindfleisch Etikettierungs Überwachungs Aufgeben Übertragungsgesetz. Gesetz. That's going to be on the internet forever. I'm sorry. But as you can see, German naming convention is great, not just for our code, but for any code that's actually in our tutorials. If you use any code samples in anything that you are teaching, any type of learning resource or documentation, be explicit in those code samples too. Not only does it make learning much more simple and easy to understand, you take away that cognitive load for people who are trying to learn what it is you are trying to teach. So German naming convention for the win. You want people to know that they understood. That is your goal. Next, tell me what I need. And at the beginning of every single tutorial, there are things that you should tell somebody so that they can make a decision on whether or not they're going to use your tutorial. But if you have these things, the more likely it is that you're going to have a valuable tutorial. So what should be part of it? Tell me, what background knowledge will be helpful before starting this tutorial? If this is something super intermediate, if this is something that you need 2 or 3 years of programming experience on, let me know that. Tell me what I need to know rather than having me read all the way through and go, oh wait, there's still some other background dependencies that I still need to learn before I even understand this thing. Tell me what those prerequisites are. Tell me, what dependencies do I need to download? You'd be surprised as to how many people write a tutorial and don't tell me what I need. They just go through those steps, and then just like in that tutorial where they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're using Java 7, not 8, they tell you halfway through. And so that's super, super frustrating to get halfway through a tutorial and then have to wait because you have to download some dependencies that you didn't know that you needed. So tell me what those dependencies are and tell me them right away. Tell me, can I complete this on a free tier? Again, with so many pieces moving to the cloud, with so many accounts that we have to create, with all of these different services that we have to keep track of, let me know if this can be done on a free tier or if I need a credit card, because sometimes that's going to sway my decision, and sometimes it's going to tell me this is probably something I don't want. So tell me potential costs of every single learning resource that I create. Tell me if there are some steps that need to be completed before I start. Sometimes before, in the days of Babel, we needed to transpile things, and then we can move on with our lives. Tell me those kinds of steps. Tell me things that need to be done beforehand. Tell me the preconditions that are needed as part of this tutorial. And finally, tell me an estimate of how long this should take. We're all busy people. Every one of us has a life. Every one of us likes to get into the groove or zone of whenever we want to learn things. Maybe it's during work, maybe it's during the weekend, maybe it's the 30 minutes that I have free on Wednesday after I make my coffee. I don't know, but whatever your schedule is, if you tell people how long approximately this thing should take, then people can estimate better when they can fully focus on the tutorial that they're about to follow from you. And the more likely they'll be able to finish it and follow through. So tell me what I want, what I really, really want. And I could not find the Spice Girls GIF for this. I'm so upset. So it's broken the pattern. But just imagine it's there, right? As you can say, right? So tell me what I need. Tell me what I need. Tell me what I want. Next, unclear part is random screenshot who dis. So here's a really nice looking screenshot. But out of context, it could be really, really useful, or it could be completely useless. What makes it useless? If the screenshot you have doesn't support what you're trying to explain, don't put it in there. If it's paired with the incorrect step, make sure it's paired with the right step. If it shows a different result than the one that you're describing, or worse, it's outdated, or the UI looks different, don't use that screenshot. And if you don't have any meaningful alt text on it, or you don't have the details of what's important about the image in there, fix that as well. So only add screenshots if they add actual additional clarity to your tutorials. Do your due diligence. Try naming your screenshots so that they match the step number that you have. And make sure to actually go through it and see that the ones that you are expecting or describing actually follow what is happening on your page and follow what screenshot is actually showing at that step. follow your own steps and recapture the actual results if necessary. I know when we are writing all of these types of tutorials or we do series and we get into the zone, and it's a lot of work to create really, really useful, meaningful tutorials like this, but sometimes you at least need to go through your own steps at least once to make sure that the ending result is what your potential learners will be following and expecting as well. It's also a great way to catch any mistakes. And finally, at a minimum, put all of the relevant settings and the inputs, the buttons, whatever it is that you're trying to show in your screenshot. Make sure you add that into the alt text as well. So don't be someone who's a random screenshot. Make sure you know what screenshot is going to you. And those are the top 5 for what makes a lot of these things unclear. The next part are all of the 5 things that I have found that I myself have done before that make it unhelpful. And so these are also things we should try to look out for. So the first one is, oh, you didn't know that? So every single person I know, no matter who it is, DevRel, other devs, documentation engineers, technical writers, maybe not as many as now, but what we do is we always assume that our reader has knowledge on the topic. Whether that's, oh, this is geared towards developers, so they're gonna know X, Y, Z, or this is going to be geared towards this audience, so I don't have to write about these basic pieces of information. No. Assume your reader has no knowledge on the topic. When you start out creating any type of learning resource in this fashion, you are more focused on what needs to be put into that learning resource. Assume they don't know what those acronyms are. Explain it and link to it the first time. Assume they don't know what it means to install an NPM package. Go through or link to some preset instructions to tell them how to do it. Make sure to be overly explicit. Make sure to have as much information as possible so that even if you yourself, 6 months down the line, decide to go through your own tutorial and you forget, you help yourself in the future. So assume that your reader has no knowledge on the topic. Explain yourself, please. Next thing that I have found is that no more 404s. So in your tutorials, you'll have, in this tutorial, you'll learn how to use this fancy new technology through a variety of use cases. But if you don't already have a fancy service account, be sure to create one following this tutorial. Detailed instructions on setting up your account can be found here. So if you've ever gone through a tutorial like this, as I have many a time, I'm sure you end up feeling like this. You're just like, I'm not gonna go through this anymore. Nothing is working. Things that I need to get through this tutorial are not there. And there's no footnotes, there's no alternative links to point to. Make sure those links are fixed, especially if they go to a preset list of instructions or they are integral pieces or services that's part of your account. Fix those links, make sure that they are working. It's something so simple, but something that we take for granted and overlook often. Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. Please, fix it. Fix it. Next thing that is super unhelpful is something I like to call jump to recipe. Sorry. So, who here likes to bake? Anybody? Okay, a few. Cook? Okay. Baking's better. But if you've ever found all of these recipes, right? You look for a recipe, and then you find one, you're like, oh, this one looks good. And then, you know, most of these people who write them, they're like, here's my whole life story. And, you know, I just got engaged, and I was thinking about what could I make for my new fiance. And here's some more really pretty pictures of what you could be making, but let me not tell you what it is. There are tutorials that are like this, right? They're either so long that you kind of lose track when you yourself follow it, or you only need a portion of it, a piece of it, but you can't find where to go because it's so damn long. Instead, we should do something like this person, or like what most people are now adopting, and that's this really important button here called Jump to Recipe, where you can skip their life story and you can go exactly to what you need. Tell me the ingredients that you need. Tell me the steps that I need to take so I can stuff my face with this jacked up banana bread, right? And in the same fashion, we want to do this with our tutorials. So not to toot my own horn, I am ex-MongoDB, but this is something that I did for a lot of the tutorials I had when they were really, really long. I would add a very, very simple quick jump section. Could be a table of contents. It could be any set of links where you tell someone, hey, this is what I'm going to talk about. Here's where you can go directly to do it. And by adding this, you cut down on so many wasted hours of people trying to just scroll through, find what portion it is that they actually need, and try to get through, and you make it easier for both you and them. Help me help you, okay? Get straight to what you need to do. And then, something I like to call, not now Jiffy, and yes, I pronounce it Jiffy. So, with the exception of this presentation, because this context is different, I'm talking about videos, or more likely blog posts and more written format. We always find these types of tutorials. I did it myself. I was very much like this, where you start out your tutorial, and at the end, you're like, woohoo, you put a woohoo gif in there, and you're like, you did it, Ray, we got to the point. And then you find another one, and you want to convey how you may be feeling to the learner. You're like, yeah, I was like this too. What does this mean? I don't know what this error means. And then as you start searching, you find an inside joke, and you're like, oh, that's hilarious. I'm going to put that in there because that's exactly how I feel while going through this tutorial. So you put that in there as well. And then you go, oh, well, I'm going to talk about HTTPS, so let's add this because this is going to make a great banner, right? And then you're like, oh, let me add this one because this is exactly how I feel as well. And you want to pump up those learners, make sure they're motivated, get them through the rest of the tutorial. And then you find other ones and you're like, well, I just have to add that one in there because I love Silicon Valley and this is just great. And by the time you get to the end, if you make it to the end, you're just like, I did not understand anything that you just said. I got your jokes, I laughed at some of them, but I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. I didn't actually follow through the tutorial that you intended to teach me. It was so cluttered, and every other paragraph was a GIF or a joke that I kind of got lost and lost my train of thought. So, not to say that all of these pieces are bad or that you can't have any of them at all. Granted, mine is full of them, again, different context presentation. But I think that if you resort to just one, if you clean up the clutter, it will be way more impactful. Leave it towards the end, or leave it where it will matter, or take it out where you really need focus on some of the steps and you don't want to distract your learner. Try to have less than more. And finally, it works on my machine. How many of you people still use this excuse? Yeah? I'm confident. I'm like, yeah. How many people hear this from other people and you're like, yeah. Same, right? When it's us, it's like, oh no, I did my best. When it's someone else, you're like, come on. So, it works on my machine. So there are plenty of tutorials, learning resources, documentation, that surprisingly are still like this. So they go, sorry, this tutorial only works with Windows. Or this sample repo relies on version 3.2.6 and above. Or the rest of this guide assumes you have this SDK installed. For all of these pieces, rather than just taking the easy way out, rather than just notifying your potential learner that this is what they have to be aware of, take those pieces and make it platform agnostic. Make it easier for the learner. They're already having a hard time because they are about to learn something potentially new. When you add all of this, what we like to call dev setup frustration, it really, really decreases the likelihood that they're going to continue on with your tutorial. So use Docker, create a container image if you can of whatever it is that you are about to teach. Make a sandbox environment for them. Make it super, super simple. If you have the ability to, create a template repo or a starter app. I mean, how many people, how many lives has Create React App saved? Oh, wow, okay. No? Not even just to start? Who has used Create React App? Raise your hand. There we go, inflating the numbers, woohoo! So, The point is, if you can create something that someone can start off of, if you can remove the boundaries of setting something up and configuring something before they can even get to the point of learning the thing that they need to learn, do that for them. Do that for your learner. Make it so that they go, this is so easy. This is the reaction that you want whenever you create a learning resource. You want someone to feel empowered. You want someone to feel like they can take on another tutorial. You want someone to know that they can do it. And it actually speaks to both of you, because if you can make someone feel like this with your learning resource, that means you have done a damn fine job of creating that piece. So for the bad, for all of the learning resources that we've ever created and will create for the rest of our lives, we need to do the bare minimum, actually. We need to do the bare minimum to make it not unclear and unusable, but concise and valuable. So to recap, shaking my head, I don't know, spell out the damn abbreviations. Say the darn thing. Just at least put it in the first sentence, the whole thing, and then write out what you're going to abbreviate with, and then you can abbreviate for the rest of your tutorial. Check your steps before you wreck yourselves. Please, don't skip your steps. Don't go halfway through and say, oh, by the way, you need this or you need that. Oh, there's this important piece of information that you're missing. Make sure you explicitly go through every step and get the result that you want, and follow through your own steps to see that you are getting that result that you want. Use German naming convention, bitte, please. First things first. Tell me what I want, what I really, really want. Preconditions, prerequisites, potential costs, how much time, and the fifth one I'm already forgetting, but tell me everything that I could possibly need to know about my tutorial so that I am ready for it, so I can estimate when to do it, and so that I am ready to follow through it all the way without any hiccups in between. Make screenshots make sense. Pair them with the right steps. Put alt text on all of the images. If a GIF is better, use a GIF. And if they actually add clarity to what you're trying to explain, then add them. Otherwise, take them out. Make sure everybody knows that. Do not assume that people know knowledge on the topic that you're about to teach. Come from a standpoint of that they know nothing, and be able to write that and infuse that in any learning resource that you do. Repair those links. Fix it, fix it, fix it. You don't want someone to go all the way through and then get to a crucial point and have a 404 and they're like, let's go, let's get out of here. Use the jump to recipe method. Add quick jump links and get on with your day. Help people by having them go to exactly the point that they want, and make your own tutorials and learning resources way easier to digest because it's broken down into digestible chunks. And then have just a little jiffy for a snack, not to distract. So again, you can add your humor in there, you can infuse it with a GIF or two, but make sure it is not overwhelming, make sure it is not too distracting, make sure you still get your point across and you still teach something in the thing that it is you're trying to teach. And then finally, make sure it works on all machines, not just your machine. And if you have all of these pieces, I guarantee you that you will have concise and valuable learning resources, and you will have the best pieces in every single learning resource that you make. So, Köszönöm szépen, JSConf Budapest. I'm Adrienne Tacke. I'm going to be a cloud developer advocate at soon. I'm going to announce next week. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope this helps.